Did you ever wonder how certain plants can heal your brain and body? Or did you wonder how smell can literally trigger systems in your brain for well-being? This, along with how a zebra can calm themselves down way more effectively than we humans can, is all a part of my fascinating interview with Jodi Cohen, a functional practitioner who combines aromatherapy and the power of essential oil derived from plants to help with anxiety, appetite, sleep, inflammation, and much, much more. So grab your nostrils and come on into this enlightening episode of the Thin Thinking Podcast. Did you know that our struggle with weight doesn't start with the food on your plate or get fixed in the gym? 80% of our weight struggle is mental. That's right. The key to unlocking long-term weight release and management begins in your mind. Hi there, I'm Rita Black. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, weight loss expert, best-selling author, and the creator of the Shift Weight Mastery process. And not only have I helped thousands of people over the past 20 years achieve long-term weight mastery, I am also a former weight struggler, carb addict, and binge eater. And after 2 decades of failed diets and fad weight loss programs, I lost 40 pounds with the help of hypnosis. Not only did I release all that weight, I have kept it off for 25 years. Enter the Thin Thinking Podcast, where you too will learn how to remove the mental roadblocks that keep you struggling. I'll give you the thin thinking tools, skills, and insights to help you develop the mindset you need, not only to achieve your ideal weight, but to stay there long term and live your best life. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. Happy to have you here today. The week that this episode drops, we are heading into July next week and the deep summer, as I like to call it. Deep summer. July is the month where everyone goes on vacation from their lives and from their weight management, as well as summer functions heat up and travel plans are happening. So make sure that you are getting your dose of thin thinking every week to stay on track. And in July, we are going to explore emotional eating and how to manage it. So stay tuned. Please stay tuned through July. So in July, I will also be rolling out my new emotional eating hypnosis program process package. I'm not quite sure what to call it, but it's a collection of some hypnosis sessions, meditations, and coachings about shifting out of emotional eating. So I haven't quite labeled it or branded it yet, but that's the general gist of what you're going to be getting. And we are going to be giving away one of these packages, processes, whatever we decide to call it, in a drawing after the 15th of July. So how do I get into that drawing, Rita, you ask? Well, simply write a review of the Thin Thinking Podcast and post it on your listing platform. And this is important. You've got to post it on the platform. You can't just send me a copy of the review. It has to be posted on a platform. Sorry, but that's the rule. Because it's just sending it to me in a review. I cannot put it on there. You have to do it yourself. I wish I could. I know sometimes it's confusing how to send a review, but literally you go to Apple, you go to Spotify. It's right there. Write a review. Write it. Take a photo, screenshot, and send it to me at rita@shiftweightmastery.com, and you will get a free hypnosis download in return, and will also be entered into a drawing for that emotional shift out of emotional eating. So get writing that review. Now, speaking of emotions and nerves, I'm excited to introduce my guest today on the Thin Thinking Podcast, who's going to walk us through how oils from certain plants and plant oil blends can help us with allergies, inflammation, anxiety, appetite, and even sleep. I didn't know, I will be honest with you, I didn't know much about aromatherapy and essential oils. I know maybe some of you really do, and you've been into that, but that has just kind of gone under my radar. But I have to say, I am now super fascinated with this conversation I had with Jodi. I met Jodi through a friend who recommended her to me because she had helped so many people around her. I was like, well, who is this woman? I want to meet her. So, Jodi Cohen is a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, functional practitioner, and the founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, where she has combined her training in nutritional therapy and aromatherapy to create unique proprietary blends of organic and wild-crafted essential oils. She has helped over 50,000 clients heal from brain-related challenges, including anxiety, insomnia, and autoimmunity. For the past 10 years, she has lectured at wellness centers, conferences, and corporations on brain health, essential oils, stress, and detoxification. She has been seen in the New York Times, Wellness Mama, Elephant Journal, and numerous publications. Her website, vibrantblueoils.com, is visited by over 300,000 natural health seekers every year, and she has rapidly become a top resource for essential oils education on the internet today. Please welcome Jodi Cohen. Hello, Jodi. Thank you so much for coming here and being on the Thin Thinking podcast today. I'm really excited about talking to you about essential oils.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm excited to share more, and especially as it relates to your listeners.
Oh, well, cool. Yeah. And we were just talking, Jodi and I, about she's a Seattle native, as am I. So we were exchanging Seattle information. So I am embarrassingly undereducated about essential oils, aromatherapy, or using aroma as a way of healing. And so I'm really, really fascinated by this. And the more I read about you and what you're up to, because you're really so deeply into this and know so much about it. Can you just tell me, and my listeners who don't know anything about this, what is essential oils and aromatherapy? Give us a little background first.
Yeah, so essential oils are the concentrated essences of plants. So what that means, if you were to go in a lavender field and cut some of the lavender flowers and put it into a pot of boiling water, the steam is going to rise and the oil is going to be slightly heavier than the water. So it would go down one side, and then the water, which is a hydrocele, would go down the other. And so it takes it would be about 50 cups of peppermint tea. That's like one drop of peppermint oil. So it's super, super concentrated. And what people may or may not know is that plants are really the basis for over 50% of the pharmaceutical drugs. Like white willow became aspirin, valerian root became Valium. So we were kind of looking to plants as our original medicine and remedies. And then drug companies just came along and basically formed something similar. And so plants are very healing. Anyone who's had kind of a tummy ache, who had a cup of peppermint tea or ginger tea can tell you that. Anyone who was having any kind of respiratory issue, who might have smelled eucalyptus. We know these work. And what I'm trying to do is take the guesswork out of it. So interestingly, a lot of the research on oils and how they work and what they work for looks at blends, which means more than one oil. So not just peppermint, but peppermint in combination with citrus. And when you combine them, it's a little bit like a recipe. You can obviously have salad dressing that's just olive oil, and that's delicious. Or you can add some vinegar in and maybe some seasoning and some other things. And the more you layer in different flavors, the more robust the experience is. And so when you combine oils, like our most popular blend is clove, which is super stimulatory, and lime. And the reason we combine them, clove has medium-sized molecules. So if you put it on your skin, it will take like 15 to 20 minutes to get through. Lime has very small molecules. So if you put it on your skin, it's like an acupuncture needle. It gets in immediately. And so when you combine those two, you get kind of the amazing healing properties of the clove and the carrying into the skin quickly properties of the lime. So that's what I'm really looking at, is helping people kind of not only find medicinal things to help your body return to balance, but also the most effective mechanism to get them into the system so you can heal quickly.
I am so fascinated by this. And as you're speaking, I remember we did ancestry.com and we found out my great 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 grandmother actually was a medicine woman in Alton, Illinois, and she was renowned for helping people with skin rashes and with allergies. So, I bet she was doing some of the same things you are, but probably in a very much more remedial way. So, tell me how because it sounds like you didn't start out in the essential oil world. Like, how did you find your
Yeah.
way into this? I'm curious about that. I always like to know how people find their way into what they do.
Well, it's funny how, I used to always think I was healthy, like I was a student athlete and I tried to eat healthy and exercise. Um, but I also was kind of that you can sleep when you die type of person, like overachiever, no rest for the weary, which, worked until it didn't, basically. When my younger child was about 2 years old, my first child was super easy, and I just thought I was this great mom. And so I had a second one like 22 months later, and he was really a different species. He was not easy, and he had no impulse control, and it was really hard to get him to focus. And he was a sensory seeker, which meant he liked to touch other people, even when they didn't like to be touched. And it was just a lot. And none of the parenting books that I read seemed to really make a difference. And one day we were at a birthday party, I believe, at the zoo. And one of my friends complimented me that he was doing really well that day. And I had that proud mom moment for maybe 2 minutes until another mom started passing out snacks, and it was a Ritz cracker. He ate the cracker, chuckle-eyed, and just took off sprinting toward the Jaguars, which were his favorite. And so, I had to run after him, grab him, bring him back. And my friend who I was talking to said, I've never seen him Jekyll Hyde so quickly after eating something. You should take him to a nutritionist. My brother was on Ritalin his whole life, and it turned out he was just allergic to weird foods. And I thought,
Uh,
that's easy. I can do that. I've done everything else. Took him to a nutritionist who told us that he was sensitive to corn, soy, and dairy. We changed his diet, and the next day his personality changed. And my mind was so blown because you really, as a mom, I really was investing in my children, and I couldn't believe I probably had taken like, 7 different parenting classes, read like 50 books. Our big cue is we used to point at our nose and say, look at my nose. And he couldn't look at our nose. And the next day he could look at my nose. And I'm like, I had no idea food had such an impact on behavior. And I was so interested. I wound up going back and getting a degree in nutritional therapy because, I really wanted, I have never felt like such a failure at anything in my life, but, having that kid who did those things, it was really rough. And I wanted to help other parents who were in that dilemma. And so in the process of getting a degree in nutritional therapy, I learned a ton about physiology and organ function, and was really, quite interested in how does the body work, and when symptoms arise, what's causing it. And then my ex-husband basically was bipolar, and it got to the point where I really thought he might die on my watch. And so I moved him to a residential treatment facility. And once I knew he was safe and it wasn't my job to keep him safe, it was like I had been running, a 10-year marathon and I just crossed the finish line. But I was so exhausted and depleted. I had no energy to be a mom, to be a class parent, to be an employee. And I knew from my studies that this had to do with my adrenal glands and my hypothalamus. And so I was ingesting all the right food and all the right remedies, and it really didn't do anything. And I was getting worried. I'm a good researcher. I'm good at figuring things out. And luckily for me, a friend of mine who was into essential oils had been planning to give me this thank you gift. I'd helped her with a fundraiser, and it was all oils. And when she dropped it off, she said, you have been so high stress for so long, which means that your body's pumping out cortisol, and cortisol can cause systemic inflammation. And when your gut's inflamed, like no matter what remedy you're ingesting, it's probably not getting digested, absorbed, and assimilated. But oils are different. You can smell them, they go directly to the brain. The nasal passageways are basically the elevator of the brain, the easiest way to access the brain. When you topically apply on the skin, it gets right in, to the system, which is why nicotine patches and hormone creams work. Like, try this. And I thought, well, you know what do I have to lose? And I had gotten pretty good. I'd actually taken in Seattle, they've got Bastyr and they have all these muscle testing courses, which are basically an expedited way to figure out what the priority is, which was super helpful for little squirmy kids. So I kind of muscle tested the box. Will anything in here help my adrenals? And I normally get one remedy. It's usually pretty clear. I kept getting the same five. And that confused me until it occurred to me, oh, wait a minute, they're liquids. I can combine them like a mixed drink. And I literally went to my kitchen, grabbed a shot glass, kind of started muscle testing, 5 drops of this, 7 of this, put it together in the shot glass and put them on my low back because I knew that's where the adrenals were the most accessible. And I had one of those moments where I went from like, I'm so tired, I don't know if I can put in the effort to climb the stairs to my bedroom to like, maybe I can go run a mile. I kind of feel good.
Wow.
I can do this. So I went on a run and then I was like, maybe I can go to the supermarket. Maybe I can clean the house. Maybe I can do all the laundry and put it away. All those things that as moms we do like every day, but sometimes it just feels like too much. So I got an exceptional amount done that day and kind of felt like myself again. And so when I was lying in bed that night, I was like, that really worked. Like, I wonder what else I could do. So I started just formulating things and using them to heal myself. And when I got better, all of my friends that were trying to help me and were kind of aware of my dilemma asked, like, hey, what did you do? Hey, can we try this on other people? And it worked on other people. So I literally just decided, okay, I'm going to just put this out there. I'll write a blog and, started it actually from my kitchen table.
That is amazing. What a powerful story.
Thank you.
So tell me this. So it's intriguing. Now I want to know more. So when you're smelling an oil or using an oil, talk about how it impacts the brain and how
Yeah.
it impacts the body. Like how does it do that?
So, smell is actually critical to survival. You smell food, you smell water, you smell predator odor, you smell fire. And because of that, like necessity to have, for smell to kind of signal your brain, of your 5 senses, smell has the most direct access to the emotional part of your brain, your amygdala. The other 4 senses have to kind of travel through the thalamus first and then get passed along to the amygdala. This is why, for any listeners who sometimes you smell something and all of a sudden it takes you immediately to that spot. Like my grandparents grew up in Brooklyn, and whenever I smell mothballs, I think of their apartment. I'm like, it's suddenly like I'm 5 years old in
Right.
Brooklyn, and I know a lot of people have that intense smell memory and it's survival related. But why this is helpful with oils is because you can smell something like orange is a great one. And it immediately kind of, all citrus oils tend to be uplifting. So it gets into the brain and suddenly you're in kind of a meh mood, or in Seattle, if it's one of those cloudy, overcast days, and we're like, I'm feeling a little sad. Suddenly you're not. Suddenly you're okay.
That is fascinating. And of course, that makes total sense to me because smell, I think, is our memory and smell goes back the furthest or is the most distinct.
Yeah.
Smell evokes the most clear memories. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly. Yeah.
It's
Now,
true.
and so, and then also on the body. So if you're applying something to your body, how does that get into the body? Like you mentioned, applying it to your back. Are there
Yeah.
different points of entry for different cures? I'm assuming
This
there is.
is this is one thing that I'm the most excited about because I feel like this is so misunderstood. Like most people assume that in order, we know that like say we injure our wrist or something, and maybe we put a cortisone cream on the wrist. We know that it makes the wrist feel better, but it doesn't necessarily travel through the bloodstream to other areas of the body. So we think that topical is useful only for like local application, right? Not systemic. And most people assume it would need to get into the blood, be carried from the blood to the heart, then be pumped systemically. And that's not wrong. But what I've also noticed is there are all these reflex points that people use in acupuncture. And if you apply an oil on a reflex point, it has a systemic impact. So if, for example, if you put our adrenal blend on the adrenal glands on the low back, it affects the adrenal glands and then has a systemic effect. There's a point that I like behind the ear on that bone. Acupuncture points are always kind of divots, so you can feel it. That has a systemic effect of helping your body kind of shift out of danger and fight and flight into safety gear. So that's what I'm really doing is I'm creating kind of proprietary blends, not just one oil, doing it for you, and then telling you exactly where to put it to help the body shift back in balance.
So yeah, and this is something that I read with you, like you are obsessed with blends and that single oils may be
They're fine. There's nothing wrong with them.
right, but you're diving deeper. You're
Yeah.
using different
Combination.
blends. And like you said, like for instance, the lime and clove, that's going to help deliver the clove faster into the body than just the
Yeah,
clove on its own.
exactly.
Uh, mhm. So now, how does one, so there's many different applications of using essential oil. Like I know you can ingest it, I know you can put on your body, you can just smell it. Like, so if you were like for every single, because I know, and I'm going to ask you more about all the different ways that you can use essential oils to heal. But if just give me for an example, like you put on your back, that's a direct application onto the skin for the adrenal glands. Um, are there ones that you would just smell the essential
Yeah.
oil? Or, okay.
Yeah. And my favorite, like, here's what I really think. If it's not easy, people don't do it. Like we all have supplement graveyards, all these remedies that we just never use. And so what I really try to do is like, let's make it as easy as possible for you to actually use this. Let's put it in a small bottle that you can carry in your pocket. Let's just do something let's meet you where you're at. If
Mhm.
you're not going to remember, let's have you put it by your toothbrush because the easiest way to start a new habit is to marry it to an old habit. So just use it when you brush your teeth twice a day. If you're like me, prone to anxiety attacks, you can smell it through the left nostril. And this is something that I learned from a friend of mine, Titus Chu, who is a functional neurologist. There's a whole branch of chiropractic that's actually trying to stimulate different areas of the brain. So anyone who is prone to anxiety or panic attacks, that is your right frontal lobe, your right forehead, that's kind of overactivating. So the way you calm that, put it into balance, is you do something to activate your left frontal lobe, your left forehead. And the easiest way to do that is literally take your right thumb, plug your right nostril, smell anything. It can be an oil. It can literally be, the citrus oils live in the fruit of the citrus fruit. So you can peel an orange and just smell that. It doesn't matter. Smell it through your left nostril. Smelling, you know how if you're ever starving and you go to a restaurant and they bring the salad, by the time you're done with the salad, you're slightly less starving. You can get satiated from smell also. So hold it about an inch below your nose, smell 3 to 5 times. What this is doing is it's stimulating your left frontal lobe, balancing the two hemispheres of the brain, and suddenly you're less anxious and less panicked.
Oh, that is amazing. Now you mentioned appetite because I know we are a weight management podcast. Like, does smell also impact? Well, obviously, smell
Yes.
impacts our appetite. But how can you use essential oils to manage weight? Like, I know you do. Like, you have a blood sugar essential oil or something that helps with blood sugar management. Like,
Yeah.
just tell us a little bit about how you would do that and how that impacts the brain. I'm
So
very
the
curious.
best research for the listeners is on peppermint and cinnamon oil. Peppermint oil, there's a ton of research that smelling peppermint oil kind of calms appetite. So if you're trying to stop snacking between meals or not snack before bed, just smelling peppermint can help with that. And you can
Mm,
even, I'm not a huge fan of diffusing because I think it's wasteful. I think you don't need as much. But if you want to, like the way I tell people to do it, if they really want to, is have a little pile of salt in a really small little dish. It can be like, a sushi size dipper thing, and just put a drop or two of peppermint and just keep that near you. And that's great. The blood sugar control is peppermint and cinnamon and celery seed. And basically, you can just put a little drop on the inside of your cheek and it helps to calm appetite. And I know this works because you and I are both from Seattle. My kids both used to play select soccer, which meant sometimes I would have to drive an hour in traffic to the middle of nowhere. And imagine the fun and the joy of having a pool full of children who suddenly decide that they're starving and you have no food in that car. But you might have this oil. And so you suggest they try that and it works. And I can tell you if it's working on teenage children, it works.
That is amazing. I love that. Now, why celery seed? That's really curious to me. Like celery seed, and I know cinnamon helps with blood sugar regulation, right? Like it
Yeah.
can help with that. But celery, that's really interesting.
I think it's a combination of it drains lymphatics. I think that sometimes when the body balances out, like you're less prone to crave, like need things that might pull you further out of balance.
No,
Adrenal's
that makes
another good one because and pancreas, sometimes what's happening is it's blood sugar. If your blood sugar is fluctuating, you want to grab food because it's another way to kind of manage your blood sugar. And then
mhm.
also sleep. If you're struggling to either fall asleep or stay asleep, then you're understandably fatigued. And so you need like sugar or food to kind of keep you awake.
Yeah. Okay. So now a little more of that. I'm going to put a pin in that. I want to ask you about like I think you have a flagship essential oil that really helps with the parasympathetic
Yeah.
system. Tell me about that and tell us, like, if I was a listener who didn't even know what the parasympathetic
Yeah.
system was, it just educate us a little bit about that because I hear like I went on your website and I saw all these testimonials. I mean, she's got amazing testimonials about everything, sleep, nerves, anxiety, helping their kids get to sleep. I mean, it's really amazing what you do. I mean, it's really, really cool. I love learning about this. So, but tell us about the parasympathetic, because this is like your main, I mean, what people you're known for. I mean, you're known for a lot. You're known also for your professionalism and your integrity
Oh, thank
with
you.
your product. But tell us about the because I'm really curious.
I'll just preface this with a quick story. So when my kids were little, I was super stressed. Basically, in order to be healthy, you need to eat, sleep, and move, right? And calm your stress because when you're stressed, that throws everything off. So these doctors would be like, you need to calm your stress, and I had a bipolar husband, two busy kids, a full-time career, laundry that needed to be done, meals that needed to be cooked. And I would joke, like, what am I going to do? Go to like a spa and relax for an hour and then come home and I still need to drive carpool and do all these things. And I'm not firing, I'm not divorcing my husband at this time. I'm not firing my children. It was like my life was stressful, but I wasn't going to drop any of the stress in my life. And then I realized that it didn't really matter what stress was going on because I could switch my response to it. So for anyone who like has ever been driving and someone cuts you off and you're like, well, I'm fine. I'm not in a hurry. I hope they get there safely. You really don't care. You're totally good. And then the next day, the exact same situation may happen and four-letter words are flying out of your mouth. The only variable in that situation is you and how able you are to be resilient in that moment. So your ability to be resilient in that moment is dependent upon your autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system controls your automatic functions, your heart rate, your digestion, your breathing, all these things that we do unconsciously that we don't need to think about. And it's really designed to keep us alive. And what that means is it prioritizes safety and survival. So, for example, they talk about the lion chasing you down the street. I don't see very many lions chasing me down the street. But I do notice that when I turn on the news and see a school shooting, I suddenly think, is that going to happen to someone I love? And it's not just physical danger. It can be anticipatory stress. The idea that someone you love might get killed going to school, or, someone you love might get sick and wind up on a respirator. All of these things kind of trigger our stress and our safety response. And that is what is known as the sympathetic fight or flight branch of your autonomic nervous system. And ideally, what happens is, you're driving, someone's about to change lanes, they don't see you, you honk, you brake, you don't get in an accident, you basically mobilize your resources for survival. Sympathetic, your eyesight changes, blood is routed away from digestion towards your arms and your legs. And then the danger passes and you shift back into that parasympathetic rest, digest, heal mode. There's a great book that you can actually get for free online. It's called Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it talks about in the wild how the lion chases the zebra escapes, and then he lies on the ground and shakes. You might see your dogs do this. They bark at another dog and they shake. What they're doing when they're shaking is they're recalibrating. They're shifting out of sympathetic fight or flight into parasympathetic rest and digest. And then they're able to heal and move along. We as humans sadly don't do that. We take every stress. We have a fight with our mother and our kids having a bad day and our husband can't find something and we have a deadline at work and it just piles on, additive and cumulative. And we're kind of shaking all day. And we never, even when we go to bed at night, we don't kind of chill and get out of it. And what I'm super excited about is that we can control our physiology, the gear shift between that fight or flight, I'm in danger, I need to shake, and the parasympathetic rest, digest, chill, the guy cut me off and I'm completely fine, is our vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve in our body that most people have never heard of. Cranial nerve number 10. It connects the brain to the body. So it starts at the very base of the neck, back of the head, splits. And if you feel with me right now, behind your earlobe on both sides, there's a little divot between the earlobe and the bone. That's your mastoid bone. That is where your vagus nerve is the most accessible to the surface. And that's the application point I like to use. From there, your vagus nerve winds through your throat, your heart, your lungs, every organ of digestion and detoxification. And a lot of people, there's been a lot of research about stimulating your vagus nerve to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. So it's a little bit, you would think that you should sedate to calm down, but you actually stimulate to calm down.
Interesting.
There's actually a New York neuroscientist that has surgically implanted a pacemaker-like device on that point. And the FDA has approved that for epilepsy, migraines, depression. There's a practitioner that I admire named Datis Karazian, who for years was talking about, like gag yourself with a tongue depressor, terrify yourself, gargle until, you can't take it anymore, give yourself a coffee enema. All of these things, anywhere that the vagus nerve touches, can use to activate the vagus nerve. But shockingly, people were not lining up to do coffee enemas. But when I know it's a surprise to me as well. But when I realized that they were surgically, they were basically stimulating that point behind the earlobe, and it occurred to me, like, wait a minute, oils are stimulatory, which can be perceived as hot. Like if you were to put, peppermint, oregano, rosemary, thyme on your arm, it might feel warm. It might turn a little red. That's stimulatory. Clove is one of them. So I started playing with, there's a way to kind of assess when you're in the parasympathetic state based on what your heart rate is doing. So I started testing and realized that this combination of clove and lime, basically what you're doing is you're changing the temperature in your body. So, there are still all the external stresses that are coming at you, but because you're shifting your nervous system out of that danger response into the resilient parasympathetic response, you're expanding your capacity to deal with it.
Wow, that's extraordinary. So, and as far as like past trauma,
Yeah.
because I read about trauma as well, like so that this can help with trauma or not
Yeah.
release trauma per se.
Well, it helps you. Basically, what happens a lot of times is that when people have had trauma, they relive it. They relive that trauma loop.
Yeah, it gets
And so,
re-triggered.
yeah, and it helps you kind of unpack and get out of that. And, friends of mine that deal with weight loss, they talk about, sometimes like, especially if you were assaulted as a child, you carry that extra weight because it helps you protect yourself. And so you might
Right.
be cruising along, losing a ton of weight, and then suddenly you hit a point where you suddenly feel like you're skinny
In
and
danger.
yeah. And so you hit a plateau because someone might find you attractive and therefore that's scary.
Yes, exactly. Interesting. Um, Now, how about things like I know you have blends for sleep, and that is what does that impact? I'm drawing it's the circadian, right? It's the
Yeah.
circadian. So tell me about that. I'm very fascinated because I struggle a little bit with sleep. So uh and my son really does. I know I've read about all your people who use your oils for their children. I was like, this is interesting. Yeah, tell us about the
One thing
circadian.
I mean, there's a ton of research about essential oils for sleep. A lot of people pick lavender because it's very sedentary. And what I believe is if you don't know what's causing the problem, it's really hard to fix it. So with sleep, there are kind of four things that could be going on. If you're, having trouble falling asleep, if you're lying in bed, you're exhausted, but you're thinking about, okay, wait a minute, I need to drive carpool tomorrow. And oh gosh, I didn't do the laundry and they need the soccer uniform. And all your to-do list is kind of ruminating in your head. What's happening is the hormone that helps you fall asleep is melatonin, and it's released by the pineal gland in response to darkness. Your hormones are kind of this lovely symphony that work together. So, another hormone, cortisol, that's released when you're worried about your to-do list, has kind of basically it's a juxtaposition of, like if cortisol is high, melatonin is low. If melatonin is high, cortisol is low. And this is a nice harmony. Like cortisol is supposed to be high in the morning, so you have the energy to get up and get out of bed. And then during the day, it's supposed to kind of have a nice rhythm. And then at night, it's supposed to decline when the melatonin kicks in so that you can restfully fall asleep. So we have a blend called circadian rhythm that you're basically trying to apply around the head so that it accesses the pineal gland, which is in the middle of the brain. So you put it on the very top of the head, on the skin, not on the ear, but right on the head above the ear, back of the head. I don't tell people to put oil on their face before they go to bed because if they toss and turn, I don't want oil to get into their eyes. But that helps you kind of naturally release melatonin and fall restfully asleep. If you are
Hmm.
then waking up at 1 a.m. and you're so awake you could go run a marathon or clean the kitchen, that is a blood sugar wake up. That's called nocturnal hypoglycemia. So your blood sugar dips a little low, the adrenals kind of release emergency energy, and it's in the blood. And now you're adrenalized and ready to do all these things. So, to help the body naturally resolve that, you're going to use our pancreas oil, which supports the pancreas and helps carry the blood sugar out of the bloodstream and into the cells so that you're less energized and adrenalized. If you're waking up around 3 a.m., maybe to use the bathroom and then you're able to fall back asleep, that is kind of when your detoxification organs are the most active. So your liver and your gallbladder. So what we do for that is we have a liver and gallbladder blend that you can apply before you go to bed, which helps you sleep through the night. Or if you wake up at that time, you just smell it and it helps you fall back asleep.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, that also works with hormones. Like if you're having
Oh,
a rash or something like that.
oh, well, I was going to ask you about menopause. So that would be something just to help balance out the hormones or
Basically, with hormones, I mean, there's a number of things going on, and oils are not hormones, but what you're really trying to do is, when your ovaries stop making estrogen, your adrenals take over. So anything you can do to really fortify the adrenals and give them more vitality helps. So the adrenal blend is good. We have a hypothalamus blend, which is kind of upstream from the adrenals. It controls the endocrine system. And then the other thing that you want to do is you want kind of the old hormones to leave and not get recycled and reabsorbed. So anything you can do to support the detoxification organs like the gallbladder and the liver, make sure that the old estrogen leaves, doesn't get reabsorbed, you don't get estrogen dominance. So it just helps your body kind of naturally harmonize the hormones. And then rose geranium is really good for hot flashes.
okay. And are these things as well that you're putting on topically or
Topically or smelling. Yeah.
okay.
Honestly, for hormones, it's sometimes easier to smell, like because
Hmm.
it's so immediate and you're so grateful when you're having a hot flash of something super immediate.
I haven't had a hot flash in years, I'm happy to say, but I know a lot of our listeners do struggle with that still. So I can imagine, yeah, that insta relief would be amazing. I know allergies are also a really big thing with a lot of people, and that essential oils can help with allergies. The histamine system, is that correct?
Yeah, we have one. It's actually my favorite. It's called Histamine Balance. And it's interesting because I live in Seattle, which gets so much rain that it kind of cleans the air. So we don't have tons of allergies here. But I went to Jackson Hole for an event, and wow, I have never sneezed so much in my life. I'm like, "Well, this is wow, these poor people, this is what it feels like." But fortunately, I had my histamine blend there. So I put it on the back of the neck, behind the ears. And then truthfully, there was one day when I was like, I this is painful. And I tell people to take like a Q-tip and kind of the histamine balance is blue because it's high in blue tansy, which is amazing for allergies. Just kind of soak the Q-tip a little bit and then literally put it up in your nostrils and leave it there for up to 20 minutes. That worked. I was like, all right,
Wow.
winner. Yeah.
That's so funny. My husband has horrible allergies, and a lot of times at night he snores because he gets inflamed. That would be great. I could just shove a Q-tip up his nose in the middle of the
Just,
night.
it's actually like shockingly not that uncomfortable. It's really fascinating because you can kind of feel it. I mean, obviously don't hurt anything, but just gently have it up the nose on either side.
I'm sure he would love waking up to two Q-tips hanging out of his nose. That would be funny. Um, so, and then inflammation, which is another thing I believe our listeners are very interested in because
Yeah.
arthritis, just inflammatory disease, or just inflammation in general. How can essential oils help with something like inflammation?
There's the best research on oils for inflammation, like frankincense and ginger and dill. It's so good. So we have a blend called anti-inflammatory that you can topically apply. And then also the vagus nerve stimulation, parasympathetic, it's we're all kind of this hormonal cascade. So when the vagus nerve is stimulated, it releases the anti-inflammatory neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which kind of sends the message to calm inflammation.
Mm. Wow, that's that. So you would put it on topically though, like if you
Yeah.
had it, and if your knees were achy, then you would put
Yeah.
that. Knee.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
do like I broke something for the first time in my entire life. Like last year, it was really interesting. I broke my hand, a windowsill fell on it. And I'm like, all right, let's see how this works. Let's just play. And so I wound up using anti-inflammatory, which helped a lot. But then I also noticed like when something's injured, you want to make sure that fluids are flowing, that circulation is getting there. So I
Yeah.
started putting circulation. Actually, all the oils in circulation are the ones that if you Google what to do for broken bone, they're in there so that it improved the blood flow to the injury. And then I started using our lymph, which helps kind of carry the debris away. And then the fascia, which is the connective tissue around it, to kind of reset that. It's almost like your phone is glitching. My hand was glitching. So I was trying to reboot the system, but it healed so quickly and so painlessly. I was kind of surprised at how effective that was. Not that I recommend breaking anything to try it, but
It's like, so that's so cool. And it just, so I had a question that popped into my mind about preventive.
yeah,
Like, I remember there was a woman at my son's school when he was a little. I remember her telling me, she was Canada from Toronto, and she said, do this and you will never get a cold again. And when I feel like a cold is coming on, chop ginger, put it in the hot tea, and just drink
yeah.
that. And she's
Yeah.
like, I've never had, and I've used that for years. Is there something behind that? Because obviously I know ginger is something you use. Like, can you use it like in the
So,
cold
so
season?
basically, what you're doing is you're trying to alkalize your body because
Mm,
when your body's alkalized, it doesn't really react to things. So what I do, we have an immune support oil. My secret sauce for that, and I do it for myself, for my kids. Like whenever you feel that tickle in your throat, I do an Epsom salt bath, 2 cups of Epsom salt, 1 cup of baking soda, and then a couple drops of lavender. Mix the oil into the salt before you add water, so it doesn't float on top. Make it as hot as you can possibly stand it and stay in for as long as you possibly can, 10 minutes minimum. So then you're sweating, right? You're sweating out the cold. And then I take our immune support oil and put it on the bottom of the feet and put socks on and crawl into bed. And every single time I've done it, I wake up feeling better.
wow. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And
So
apple
in
cider vinegar is something Paleo Valley has good supplements because I don't like to drink. Well, some people like to drink it. To me, it doesn't taste great, but because that's really alkalizing too.
Mm. Now, I know your oils are proprietary, so nobody else has them. I mean, what approach, like if somebody was going, well, no, wait, hold that. I'm going to come back to that for a second. I had one more question about like oil and how it can. Are you looking into, because I know of COVID and everything, long COVID, like have you noticed like any of the symptoms of long COVID being eased by essential oils, like energy levels and everything? Because I have three friends with long COVID who are desperately fatigued all the time, or a
Yeah,
good
it
deal.
just it
Mm.
dysregulates your autonomic nervous system, and so the parasympathetic helps to re-regulate it. And then I wrote a whole blog about smell retraining, how if you've lost your sense of smell, you basically, hold the oil and kind of slowly it's like exposure therapy for your smell.
Mm. And you have a number of blogs on your website if listeners wanted to go to your website. I'm going to put your website in our show notes, but so if they want to go there and read up more specifically about how particular things help different remedy or different remedies for different
Yeah.
things.
It can support the body returning to balance so that the symptoms disappear.
Yeah, okay. Love it. I will definitely look into that and ask you more about that for my friends. What would listeners look for in essential oil? Like, what do you want, like, as a consumer to make sure you're getting the best product, something that's really going to work for you?
I always say organic. Honestly, it's the concentrated essence of plants, and if plants are sprayed with pesticides, you're getting concentrated pesticides. So I would say organic or wildcrafted, the resin that you get from the for frankincense from the tree. Like they don't grow the trees organically, but be in a place where it's wildcrafted and kind of natural, so it's not covered in pesticides.
Hmm. Okay. And is there any other things like if somebody was just going to start to like want more information or get interested, should they just come to your website?
Yeah, they absolutely can. I mean, I wrote a book that kind of details how I look at oils, and there's no right or wrong way, but I do have a free chapter that they can grab if they go to boostthebrainbook.com/gift, and that will just give them more information on the parasympathetic nervous system because it actually is kind of light reading. I tried to make it fun, but it's slightly complicated. So if I breeze through it because I talk too fast, they can get more information there.
Well, and I know you have a special deal that I'm going to put in
Yeah,
the show notes. So please tell me about that. Like if somebody wanted
yeah,
just to sample or try something just to see if this was something they were into, but not have to
yeah.
invest a bunch of money, like tell us about that.
So we're giving your listeners $15 for the parasympathetic blend so they can just try
Wow.
it. They basically can just, flip the bottle, put it behind their ears. And it's great for so many things like, digestion. It's not just what you eat, it's how you eat. Like
Mhm.
it's really your vagus nerve that turns on your whole digestive cascade, that starts the saliva, the mouth releasing saliva to start breaking down the food, the stomach to release hydrochloric acid so you don't have acid reflux, the gallbladder to release enzymes so you can better digest your fat, the pancreas to release enzymes, and then kind of the moving sidewalk that is your digestive system so things don't sit too long, and nothing ferments or acidifies or anything. And then also, making sure that you're eliminating it, that you're not constipated and keeping things in. So that's the biggest thing. It's not just, what you eat, it's how you eat. So if we can make sure that you're digesting, absorbing, and assimilating your nutrients, that's going to help a lot.
Right. I love it. That's a very reasonable price to just try something out and get in. That's any other, because like I said, we have a weight management audience, any other ideas or thoughts about how oils can help with
Yeah.
the weight mastery journey?
So I grew up, my dad was a huge emotional eater,
Mhm.
and I think emotional eating is very valid. There when my dad was dying, I don't really eat sugar, I don't really eat cookies, but I never would crave a cookie so badly as when I was leaving the hospital. Like
Mm,
all my emotions, all my cortisol, all stirred up. So the parasympathetic blend can also help you kind of regulate your emotional response because it calms your ability to respond. So you're not as reactive. And you can, like when you're craving that cookie leaving the hospital, if you kind of activate your parasympathetic nervous system, you can have this moment of discernment where you can say, I mean, I guess I could eat the cookie, or, maybe I could get a cup of coffee and it would be the same, needing less calories, or maybe, I
Right.
can go for a walk. And like, it just gives you the ability to be discerning and have options so that you're better able to regulate your response.
Right. Like have that resilience in that
Yeah.
moment. So
Yeah. The pause
maybe
button.
put the essential oils in the cookie jar and instead of the cookies.
Yeah. And I mean, like, let's be honest, everyone needs a cookie day. Like, it's just going to happen, but it just gives you that option of I can, make, I won't regret it later if I'm more thoughtful about choosing it now.
Exactly. Okay. Well, this has been so enlightening and so helpful. I have all these ideas floating in my head. I definitely am excited about trying out some different uh, paths forward as far as, and for my son too, especially with the sleep. So I'm excited. So thank you so much, Jody, for coming on and spending time with us. And I will put the links to what Jody was talking about, the free chapter, links to your book. I'll put links to everything in the and including that $15 special. Thank you so much for coming on and thinking today, Jody. It was really great to meet you and to hear everything, all of your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Jody. Wasn't that fascinating? I just loved learning all of that. I'm going to go check out that oil for insomnia right now. So you can go to the show notes and check out there. The link is in there for that free chapter in her book, as well as getting that parasympathetic oil. My tongue is now twisted. For $15 in the show notes, which is a really, really great deal. And there's also some links to some of her other products for you to explore. So, and don't forget that review. Don't forget that review. Get that written and get your free hypnosis download, and also get in that drawing for July 15th. So get on that and have an amazing week. And remember that the key, and probably the only key to unlocking the door of the weight struggle, is inside you. So keep listening and find it. If you want to dive deeper into the mindset of long-term weight release, head on over to www.shiftweightmastery.com. That's www.shiftweightmastery.com, where you'll find numerous tools and resources to help you unlock your mind for permanent weight release, tips, strategies, and more. And be sure to check the show notes to learn more about my book, From Fat to Thin Thinking, Unlock Your Mind for Permanent Weight Loss.